maybe a little bit longer. While the exciting PEUC bill is still fresh in our mind, I'd like Damien to uh, hopefully not more than a total of 10 or 15 minutes for him to walk the vote on the bill. So I can take it off the calendar tomorrow and pass it through all stages of passage. Then we're going to talk about S10 as introduced, which is just the sunset extension. At this point, that part of the bill that we've been, in my mind, just one remaining issue on the reoffer of employment. And I'd like to take a straw vote on how people feel about that. It's yet to be decided whether we will combine the contribution issue and the benefit issue uh, with S10 or do a separate committee bill. Um, we'll make that decision over the course of the next day or so. So I'm hoping that that won't take more than a half hour to get to that straw vote, and then we'll use the balance of their time to get into the thornier issues of contributions and benefits, and we'll wrap it up today without, I'm not expecting any kind of votes today on those bigger issues. Um, so with that, let's hear from, if Damien can pull up S101. Senator Brock, my apology. We did walk through, it was riveting. S101 is a bill that we need to get to the governor by Friday. It's very briefly, it's a win-win-win. It's a win for claimants, they'll get added benefits. It's a win for the trust fund because it will be coming from federal dollars, and it's a win for the department because it will save them a lot of administrative work. And feel free, as Damien goes through, to ask questions. We have heard about it a couple of times last week briefly. We talked about it for 15 minutes this morning while you were from 9:15 to 9:30. But it's a bill that I think all states are passing now because it's an opportunity that the federal government has given us to help everybody. So,
There's so many good things in this bill. There's got to be something wrong with it.
well, I haven't found it yet, other than I have to report it. That's the bad part.
You don't have to, although you did on your test just get an A. Win, win, win.
Right.
That's it.
Yep.
You know.
Okay, so Damien, if you could pull the bill up, and if you want to give a very brief overview, like 1/10 of the version you gave this morning, that would be great. Or if you think I've done that already, that's also great. So, but we should walk through the bill before we discuss it and vote on it.
Okay, sounds good. So this is actually S110, not S101.
Oh, sorry. About another
That's okay.
bill.
There's a lot of bills moving right now. So what this would do is it basically allows us to, as I mentioned this morning, keep individuals on the 100% federally funded pandemic emergency unemployment compensation when they would otherwise be required to establish a new unemployment benefit year and switch back to state benefits. So that's the nutshell version. So the language here in section 1, subsection A is what allows us to keep the individuals on PEUC. So notwithstanding any provision of the unemployment law to the contrary, an individual shall be eligible to receive or to continue to receive PEUC benefits in lieu of regular unemployment insurance benefits if the following 4 requirements are met. The individual was determined eligible for PEUC during a benefit year that expired after December 27th of last year. The individual has remaining entitlement to PEUC benefits with respect to the expired benefit year. So the Continued Assistance Act added 11 additional weeks. And if the current Biden plan passes, as expected, that's going to add an additional 24 weeks of PEUC PEUC benefits for individuals. So this would likely cover a lot of individuals here, if not most. But the commissioner can talk to that a little bit more. Number 3 is that the individual would qualify for a new benefit year with regular unemployment insurance benefits. To do that, the individual has to meet the regular monetary requirements in terms of wages earned, and they can't have been wages that were used to establish the last benefit year. And then the individual also has to have earned 4 times their weekly benefit amount from the last benefit year since they started collecting benefits. So if they went back to work part-time, or they returned to work and then had to reopen their claim if their job was shut down again, they would qualify for that. And then finally, the weekly benefit amount for their new benefit year has to be at least $25 less than the benefit amount that they would have been receiving in their prior benefit year. So in other words, because they had more time out of work last year, they have less benefits available. And the weekly benefit formula is based on your 2 highest earning calendar quarters divided by 45. So if you earn significantly less in those calendar quarters, or even just a little bit less in those calendar quarters, you would have a diminished benefit here, which would enable you to stay on the pandemic emergency unemployment compensation benefits.
I hesitate to ask any questions, but the most common typical person in this situation is going to be continually unemployed from March or wherever they got laid off for the pandemic through the benefit year. How do they earn wages? Are they working part-time, or, I mean, how would they?
So there are kind of 2 scenarios that I see for those individuals. One is that when things relaxed a little bit over the summer, they were able to return to work briefly and then lost their job again. The other is that they've been on partial unemployment. So they've returned to work part-time, but they haven't been able to find a full-time job. So they've continued collecting partial unemployment. Cameron or the commissioner could provide additional examples if I'm missing any. But those are the 2 that I can think of off the top of my head, is either they return to work for a period of time when things reopened a little bit before things closed back down in the fall, or they've been able to work part-time, but they haven't been able to work full-time, so they've kept their claim open.
But the people who haven't worked at all still can qualify for this extension.
So that is, I don't know how they would qualify for a new benefit year in that case, because they haven't earned wages in employment since that opened up. So I think those folks would be transferring to PUA, if I'm not mistaken. And Cameron or the commissioner can correct me if I'm wrong, but if you can't qualify for unemployment assistance or unemployment insurance, then you would transfer to PUA. Commissioner Harrington's got his hand up.
I see the commissioner has his hand up. Yep.
Just for clarifying purposes, and I'll defer to Cam here if he wants, but my understanding is if they can't establish a new benefit year, they would potentially still be eligible for the PEUC additional weeks. So we're really talking about those people that actually can establish a new benefit year.
Okay.
And if they can establish a new benefit year at a level benefit or higher, then they will begin that new benefit year. But really what this does to say, if you were to start a new benefit year and lose out on benefits because you did not go back to work or because one of the qualifying quarters fell off, and you saw a reduction in your benefits of $25 or greater, then you could essentially keep your old benefit amount. And Cam, anything you want to add there?
Is Cam with us?
You're on mute, Cam.
I am sorry. No, I gave you the thumbs up, but
Okay.
I recognize people probably can't see me because you got the bill up. No, that is correct. If someone cannot requalify, as the commissioner said, we would allow them to remain on PEUC. Then if they exhaust PEUC, there's potential they could go to PUA. But for someone who can't requalify, they will be able to continue to exhaust any benefits available to them. As the commissioner just mentioned, and as Damien has been speaking, it's really the people who have potentially been able to do some work during the pandemic who may requalify for a new benefit year, keeping in mind they only have to make 4 times their weekly benefit amount in order to requalify for a new benefit year if they have the wages. So it's really not that much work that has to be done. And so somebody, really working part-time could be really hurt by not having this bill in place.
So it seems kind of odd. It seems like if you have no work for the last year, this law would allow you to qualify for extended PEUC, but without this law, you wouldn't qualify, right? You just that would be the end of your benefits, right?
So it could be that, it's really convoluted depending on the person's circumstance. If you haven't gone back to work, the thought is, we will continue to support you through unemployment by letting you exhaust your PEUC balance. For somebody who has gone back to work and worked a little bit of part-time, I think the reason they've passed this or allowed states to take advantage of this is to say, you individual who have been able to work shouldn't be harmed by that fact by giving you a new benefit year if that new benefit year is going to mean a reduction in your weekly benefit amount. The feds will approach it by saying, if you can put them on a new benefit year, they want the state paying for those benefits, right? The feds don't want to pay for them if they don't have to. But I think recognizing the circumstances throughout the pandemic, we don't want to harm people who have been able to work a little bit of part-time if that means they're gonna receive a reduced weekly benefit amount under a new benefit year.
I would just add, for the sake of simplicity, the ultimate purpose of this bill is, if we rerun your benefit amount and you're going to lose $25 a week or more, it allows you to keep your original benefit amount. That's the sole purpose of this bill. Where we could get into, why they would be allowed to stay on PEUC or why they would essentially go back and start, over again at the original 26 weeks of UI if they can reestablish a new benefit year. But the ultimate purpose of this bill and at the federal level is to make sure if you were going to see a decrease in your weekly benefit amount, that you could maintain your old benefit amount and stay on pandemic emergency unemployment compensation.
And that applies equally to people who would have no benefit amount for having no work in the
Correct.
last 5 quarters.
Correct. The only difference is that if, let's say you had gone back to work and you were able to reestablish a new benefit year and you didn't see a decrease in your weekly benefit amount,
Right.
then
Right.
those people, and so in my mind, that may be someone who, is a traditional seasonal layoff employee and was able to go back to work during 2020, but then was laid off prior to the pandemic and then went back to work and then could reestablish a new benefit year coming into this year, that they essentially would start back at the original 26 weeks of UI.
Right. And so that leads me to the question of this $25 thing. So you're going to have to somehow run every individual claim through that filter to make sure that they would be worse off under this law than they would by using a new benefit year? Because under the federal law, if they would be better off using a new benefit year, you got to put them on a new benefit year and you have to use trust fund dollars. But according to this statute we're passing here, which I assume is dictated by federal law, you've got to do that cross-check, right, for each claim.
We do, but I'll defer to Cameron on how we do that.
Yes, sir, Senator, we do. We're gonna try to do it in the reverse by simply, every week running the individuals through, doing a kind of pseudo monetary check to determine what their new weekly benefit amount, identifying those individuals who should be moved on to a new benefit year, and then moving them on to a new benefit year.
This is not going to cause computer problems.
Well, it will be, we'll have a report run, which will take time for us to build that report. We're working on that right now. And then it will just be communication to claimants to let them know, your benefit year has exhausted and we need you to apply for a new benefit year. And we're already doing the work with our vendor to make sure that there's a smooth transition for individuals to be able to log right back into Salesforce for the initial application, fill out the initial application. There is some steps that will have to be done, but we're trying to set this up so it'll be relatively seamless. I mean, it is work on behalf of the claimant and the department to do, but we're trying to make sure everything is lined up so it will be relatively straightforward process.
Just for also additional information, it will be a more administrative work. My understanding though, Cam, is that there is very little change outside the norm of what would happen on the mainframe
Right.
perspective, because we would be manually triggering these people.
Yeah, and I apologize. Good point, Commissioner. Yeah, there's nothing we need to do in changing programming in our system to be able to do this. The transactions are already built into the mainframe to allow someone to move from a PEUC onto a new benefit year. The system was that we ran into all these same issues when we were working through the last recession, when we had individuals on some of the extension programs. They were called EUC back then instead of PEUC. We had all of this functionality already there in order for us to move people from an extension program onto a new benefit year. So it's not any additional or new work that we have to do. It's just a matter of identifying the claimants, making sure they're aware of what they need to do, any steps that they need to take, and making sure we monitor them to make sure their new initial claim is set up correctly. So the functionality is already there.
Let me just ask one question, because I get a little nervous when I hear you're going to be contacting claimants. So let's use those 1,600 people you see coming forward in the first week after this law passes. What communication are you going to have with those 1,600 people? Does there really need to be any communication with them?
Potentially. I mean, if we identify them as needing a new benefit year, what we'll likely do is, depending on the population and depending on if we have their email address, we will likely shoot them an email and ask them to log in and fill out a new initial application. And then once they've filled out their new initial application, they will be able to just continue to file like they do now through the claimant portal on a weekly basis. If we don't have their email address, or if we find that they haven't gone in and established a new weekly benefit amount, we will just likely make a phone call outreach to them to let them know.
So
The point, Mr. Chair, is I was just going to say, we don't want, we don't want the burden.
Yeah, I may not understand this, but this week, somebody who is filing for their last week of benefits, perhaps because they've been out for a year starting March 13th, they're used to going onto the portal and filing each week for benefits. Is there a way? I mean, have they already, or will they be receiving a notice when they come to the end of their benefit year that you're done and don't bother filing, or would most people just continue to file? And if most people are going to continue to file, can't what you need for this transition be incorporated into that normal weekly filing as opposed to an email to people and confusing them?
Yeah.
And
So unfortunately, Mr. Chair, it can't. So we do send a notice to claimants when they are coming up on the exhaustion of any of their benefit amounts to let them know. And unfortunately, it's a situation where we need a new initial application to be filled out in order for that to trigger for the system to create a new benefit year for the individual. And so what I was going to say a second ago there was, our goal here is to make sure there is the least amount of burden on the claimant in order to make sure there's a successful transition. But we will have to fill out a new initial claim for them in order to, or have them fill it out, or call them and fill it out with them in order for the system to trigger that it needs a new benefit year. It's not something that's not something that we automatically do or can allow the claimant portal to just allow them to continue to file. At this point, there will need to be an intervention to get the new benefit year established.
is there any,
Sorry, have
Is there
those
any- is
started
there
to
any-
go out?
is there any leeway in terms of if you don't hear back from somebody, or do you still have to just keep hounding them and saying, until you file this, we have to delay your benefits?
Yeah, what we'll have to do is really craft the message to be clear with them that, we're going to need them to take an initial step to continue to receive their benefits. And, if it gets to the point where we're getting non-responsive, I think we will do the best we can to be as proactive in the outreach, sending them an email. If we don't see any activity on the claim, potentially giving them a phone call. I mean, we'll try to do the best we can to make the outreach as simple for the claimant as possible. But at the end of the day, if a claimant is failing to respond to our request for information, we'll likely have to put an issue on the claim, stop the claim from paying out, and then have the claimant contact us if we can't get a hold of them, because the law requires us to move them onto a new benefit year. And so we need to have a contact with them to make sure that's done correctly.
What do they need to provide you besides their name and address and that they want to continue to get benefits?
We need to know whether they've had any intervening employment, whether they've had any additional separations recently, whether they've, just the standard questions, did they receive any remuneration, any severance pay, any things like that. It's a very quick process. It's just something that we can't assume the answers to those questions on their behalf. We need them to notify us and let us know if, the answer to those questions.
So
So-
before I get to you, Senator Clarkson, one of the things that triggered this question for me is, Damien, I kept hearing when you went through this that someone had to earn a very small amount of money to qualify for this new law. And yet I'm hearing that virtually everybody will qualify except the rare bird who during this period of time has increased their weekly benefit amount through earnings in this past benefit year. So what's the thing about having to earn some money, and is that applicable to
So
everybody in this law?
I was mistaken. So Cameron and the commissioner have pointed out essentially that if you aren't going to qualify for a second benefit year, you're going to stay on PEUC until you exhaust those benefits. If you would qualify for a second benefit year, what this does is this is essentially a hold harmless, so that if you're going to lose benefits by qualifying for that second benefit year, this keeps you on the higher rate of benefits to prevent you from taking
Okay,
a
I
hit.
get that. I just want to make sure there's nothing in this bill that's going to require someone to earn some.
No, this says if you're qualifying for a new benefit year and you have remaining entitlement to PEUC and you would be losing benefits, then you stay on PEUC. That's what this says. This doesn't otherwise affect those individuals.
Real quick, Mr. Chair, my concerns, to your question, no, there's nothing in this language that requires anyone to earn any additional amount in order to take advantage or not take advantage. Our concern right now are really the minimum amount of work that an individual has to perform in order to qualify for a new benefit year. And I think I missed the first few minutes of the testimony this morning, and I think Damien was walking through it, but in order to look at someone's new benefit year who exhausts in March, if we look at their new benefit year, establishing a new one, we're looking at wages from the end of 2019 and the first quarter of 2020 when businesses weren't yet closed down. And so if somebody earned a very minimum amount of money during that time, and let's say they've earned anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 throughout the past 12 months, these are not very high monetary thresholds. Those individuals could qualify for a new benefit year, but their weekly benefit amount could be drastically different than what they're currently on. And those are the people we're trying to make sure we protect.
So you guys have scrubbed this language. It's probably very comparable to what other states have been passing. Was there like federal guidelines on how to draft this exception to allow PUC to go forward? And okay.
Yes,
All
sir.
right,
And
so,
yeah.
Damien, if you want to finish up, thank you, Cameron.
Yep. So just to be clear, everything in this bill, the feds didn't give us model language like they did with some of the other provisions, but everything in this bill is based on the criteria that they set out in their unemployment insurance program letter. So I took that criteria and I put it into our statute, our statutory language, and then I've run it by Cameron now. And then the department had it over the weekend to review it as well. Unless there's anything I'm not aware of, I think there are no problems with it at this point, right, Cameron?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the last piece here, let me reshare my screen so you can all see this, is just subsection B. And this is the other part of the federal requirement with this option. So they gave 4 options for how to structure this. And the department had indicated that they wanted to pursue the option that allows them to defer the start of the new benefit year for those individuals. So what this says is the new benefit year of an individual who's determined to be eligible to receive or continue receiving PEUC pursuant to subsection A shall not begin until after the individual has exhausted their eligibility for PEUC benefits. And then the weekly benefit amount for that new benefit year is based on the wages that would have been in their base period at the beginning of the new benefit year if it had not been deferred. So basically, the individual's still going to have that lower benefit amount in their subsequent benefit year if they need to continue collecting benefits. But this defers that until they exhaust their PEUC benefits. And assuming the Biden plan passes, that will be, there's an additional 24 weeks of benefits that they can receive. So hopefully the economy will be recovering and many of these individuals can be moving off of UI at that point.
So this morning, the commissioner said, I wasn't clear, that even if the Biden plan didn't pass, this would have some impact for the next 3 to 4 weeks or until April something. Is that where PUC presently continues to, and it goes to September because under the Biden plan, PUC goes to September? Is that as simple as that? Okay.
Yep.
So you always pique my interest when you say there are 4 options. Do all the options achieve this main goal, and what are the differences among those options?
If you give me just a second here, I will pull them up for you.
While Damien's bringing that up, and I'm sure he can run through each option, it was based on our review. We identified the option that was most advantageous for the claimant. So it allows them to preserve their benefit year until after they exhaust PEUC. as opposed to running down the clock while they're also collecting a federal benefit. So we picked the one that allowed them to, they essentially preserve it till they run out of PEUC, and then the clock starts on their benefit year.
Okay, so I don't want to spend too much time on this, Damon. Is that your understanding as well?
Yeah, it's the other ones. Two of them require the state to establish a new benefit year, and then they can either defer or augment the unemployment benefits in that new benefit year. So you're dealing with the diminished benefits in the new benefit year. And then the fourth option requires the individual to elect whether to file a claim for regular unemployment in the new benefit year. And then if they elect not to file a claim, the state would determine PEUC eligibility without regard to the unclaimed regular UC. So that puts the burden on the claimant to figure out their options. And that one, I think for the claimants, it just presents the opportunity for confusion and in an already complicated and confusing system. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Any further comments on this before we go to discussion or no, I want to actually vote this if we could, if people are comfortable with that. Yes.
My question, thanks, all three of you for helping clarify this for us. My question is, I understood from the commissioner that there are 1,600 people right away that are against this deadline. Have you already communicated with them, or are we going to have a very clear, simple communication that will help them understand, and give them very specific guidelines on how to do this easily and quickly? I mean, have you communicated already with those 1,600 to let them know, to give them a heads up that this was coming down the pike?
Yeah, we have not, Senator Clarkson. Our hope is we've been working over the past week and a half to try to identify the exact claimants that are going to be impacted first. We've run into a few issues with trying to get the information and do some analysis on it. So we're just a little delayed in getting there. I know the information that the committee was seeking as well. So our hope is to have that information this week. If this is moving forward, we can then communicate with them and let them know your benefit year expires on this date, and we will need you to log back into Salesforce, file an initial application. So that is the target we're trying to get to immediately.
If the governor signs this bill on Friday, when will the claimant get this notice, and
Right.
will they have to respond by?
I would just say that I think we will probably work to provide it, as long as we know it's headed to the governor's desk, then we will start pushing out communications to these folks even prior to signing, just so they're aware. That one of the unique caveats about this population currently is that these are the people that filed before the online Salesforce application was in place. So in some cases, anybody before the 14th that has exhausted, we don't necessarily have email addresses for, because we didn't have the capacity to collect email addresses prior to the Salesforce application through the mainframe. There's kind of two populations, those that we will need to work through. In many cases, when they will receive notification from the system and when they log into the portal that their benefit year has expired, and people have gotten that notice, they typically call the claim center. So we will make sure that our claim center has a script and question response process in place, so that when someone calls with this very specific issue, there are clear directions on how to resolve it. But there are kind of two different populations here.
So I'm still not clear, Commissioner, when, for people whose benefit years are going to end, when will their last check issue, when, and do they have to file for a new benefit year before or in the week following their benefit year ending for them not to miss a check?
Yeah, so Cameron, feel free to jump in here, but looking at the calendar, if we're talking about when the PEUC, when most people, this 1,600 population, will see their benefit year end the week ending March 13th, they will file for that week the following week, so between March 14th and March 19th. And I believe at the next week is when they will actually, not be able to file because their year will have ended. So it's not like we have to have everything squared away by the 13th, because those people will still be filing for the last week of benefit.
And they will
that
get,
last week of
they will
benefits.
get a check for this week that we're in
Next week.
sometime
Yes.
next week. And then before but they wouldn't, unless they refile, they wouldn't get the following week, the check for next week.
Yeah, and Cameron, I see your hand is up.
Okay.
No, I was just, you're exactly right, Commissioner. I mean, it's, we're not in a situation where next week people are not going to receive benefits. And our goal again is to make sure there is no issue with people continuing to be able to file, receive PEUC, and for the small number of people who we hope will be impacted, hoping it's a small number, we will be able to make sure that they do not go a week without losing their benefits.
So
But the Commissioner is right.
Just as an aside, and I'm sure the other legislators will appreciate, if there's any way you can send this message out as good news,
Yes,
people,
yes,
almost like in bold letters, good news, the legislature has extended your benefits, but you have to do this in order
Right.
to do that. Because I don't know, you may have, I'm sure there's a certain percentage of people, and even in the normal course of things, when their
Right.
benefit year ends, don't respond to you, and they have to
Right.
wait a few weeks to say, what happened to my check? And then they
Right.
call and you follow up.
I agree. The chair has read my mind. The communication is key. Instead of leading with your benefit is going away, your benefit expires, lead with good news. The benefit that would have expired is not going to. So I think how you frame it will really affect the response you get and how people comply.
Okay, any other discussion on this?
Just one brief comment, and it really reinforces, I think, what you've been saying all along, is imagine how long it took the department to explain this to us. You can imagine how difficult it is for people to really understand the landscape of what's going on. And although we can't do it before this has to be done, I think this is an opportunity to really think through the whole issue of program structure, but above all, if we can't do anything about the structure because of the federal strictures and so on, to look at how we can better communicate to people overall and explain what's going on, because the way we're doing it now isn't working well.
Well, I think there's been some improvement.
There has
I think the commissioner and others took some of our comments to heart. They put things on the front page, and we asked them to work with people who are good in linguistics and can identify with this population. So there's been an attempt, but this, you're right. This is just, I don't want to use the Biden word, but it's really a complicated, antiquated system. You'd have to look at the statute just to believe it.
But you can imagine, for example, a focus group of people who are getting benefits, of
Right.
simply asking them, what does this mean? And what do you think? And what do you see? And it's very clear that we have a real problem with communicating an incredibly complex system in a way that folks can understand it.
Right.
And that understanding, getting it, is going to make it easier. It's going to make it less problemsome. It's going to make this more trouble-free, and it'll make things operate with a bit more smoothness than there exists right now.
Yep. I think we all agree with that. Okay, Senator Rahm, as the clerk, get ready. I'm going to move S-101 favorably without amendment. And
Just
you can-
110, isn't it?
110.
110.
I'm thinking about that 11:45 meeting you have, Senator Ballard.
I thought so.
S-110. Thank you for that correction. We
Nathan,
coulda
are you
killed-
sending me
Could have
an
killed a couple of
ROA?
birds with one stone.
Yes, I'm doing that right now.
Thanks.
So if there's no further discussion, the clerk, when she's ready, can call the roll.
I'll call it and I'll fill out the sheet at a break. Senator Brock,
Yes.
Senator, oops, I skipped Senator Ballard, should have been first.
All right.
Senator Ballard,
Yes.
Senator Clarkson,
Yes.
myself, Senator Ram, yes. Senator Sorokin,
Yes. Thank you, everybody.
500.
Okay. Let's, how do people feel about just going on till 11:30? Or would you like a 5-minute break?
5-minute break.
See, people who speak up get their way. We'll see you at 10:50.
Now I just have to decide whether I'm going to get a cup of coffee or if I'm going to go to the